What's up, everyone? Welcome to the second Syndicate, where the second is first. It's been a while, but we are back. I am solo today, so I have a guest host with me, my friend Kellen. Everybody say hello to Kellen.
Hey,
Teddy is out today. He is not feeling very well, so we are going to do the show without him. And we have Kellen so generously to join us today to interview our really excellent friend and business partner. He's actually on the board of the Colorado Federal Firearms Licensee Association alongside with Teddy, who is the vice president. I am the founding secretary and the vice president of public relations for the Colorado Federal Firearms Licensee Association. We have James T. Cook, everybody. Give it up for James T. Cook. You have to always make sure to say the T. James
got it.
T. Cook. So, welcome, James. Great to have you. Welcome, Kellen. It's always a pleasure to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
So, we are going to tackle some really cool topics today. It's really nice to have an expert here with us to discuss all the things that are going on here in Colorado as well as nationwide with gun control. You know the name of the game, folks. So, let's talk about it. Let's have everybody introduce themselves first. So let's start with Kellen because he is our co-host. Kellen, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I am Kellen Lanier. I am your friendly neighborhood rabble rouser when it comes to politics. That's what I've settled on. Um, so I'm here to piss off politicians and enact change.
Right on.
And yeah,
We'll do it alongside you, bro. Thanks for joining us.
yep.
And
All right,
James.
I'm James Cook. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I practice out of Colorado Springs. Started my career with the Fourth Judicial DA's office down here in El Paso County. Started doing minor traffic offenses and misdemeanors. Eventually worked my way up to major felony cases. In 2013, I saw the way that our state legislature was going with the anti-gun laws they were looking to pass. I decided it was my time to get out of working for the government. I went into private practice at that time. I've been doing criminal defense since then. I also do a lot of work with firearms organizations, CFFLA. I'm the staff attorney for them. And I also work with Firearms Legal Protection. I'm their state attorney.
Shout out to Firearms Legal Protection. They have been very good to us. Shout out to Donnie and the team over there. I am not one of those people that's very pro self-defense insurance. I've actually been very anti a lot of these programs because I've seen the ugly side of it. But Firearms Legal Protection has done an excellent job of being not only a resource for us, but a resource for the people. It's very affordable. And what really sold me on them was they will go to bat for you regardless. Even if they know you're guilty and you're probably screwed, you paid for a service, you're going to get a service. And a lot of these organizations that are providing insurances, they don't really do that. And a huge selling point for me, too, was if something were to happen, my attorney could possibly be James. And James is also an FFL, and he's a gun enthusiast. You can see his nods in the background of his beautiful home office. So we got a real one on our hands. And a lot of these other organizations don't really have that great of a network of attorneys. So that really made me very likely to use them. And I actually do use Firearms Legal Protection now. So shout out to them. Shout out to Donnie for all the support. So we really appreciate them. But let's just jump right on in. We have a lot of things going on right now in the Second Amendment space. The big, beautiful bill, the Hearing Protection Act, the Short Act, all of these things that are being discussed on a federal level. And we put it out there for you to know that indeed the big beautiful bill might be bad news for gun owners here in Colorado. And why is that so? We have James here to explain that. We're going to do a question and answer portion today. So feel free to jump into the chat here on YouTube. Follow us on YouTube, hit that bell, hit that subscribe button, and chat along with us here. I'm following along here on my trusty little Apple device, and we'll just jump right on into it. So let's talk about some topics that we have ready to go. So just first off, James, thank you so much for joining us. What first brought you into the fight for gun rights through the legal system? What was the pinnacle moment for you?
It was Colorado passing the large capacity magazine ban. I was working for the DA's office at the time, and even that particular bill was the huge one that really kind of pushed me over the edge. In addition, my dad was kind of retiring from he'd been working for the state for a number of years, so he and I decided that we were going to open our own gunsmithing shop. And one of the problems in that 2013 year, they passed a law that required that anybody that is charged, not convicted, just charged charged with an act of domestic violence had to surrender all of their firearms immediately. And the way the law was written was very, very poor. I still believe that you're actually kind of signing away your right to your guns if you hand them to somebody else. You go through the background check. So we opened up our gun shop partially to take in people's firearms. So that was kind of my first time that I really got involved with this particular fight. I was up there testifying against it, and over the years, it's been a little bit quieter for the last few years. Then recently, everything has gone absolutely nuts in this state. And Sean with CFFLA called me up and said, "Hey, I know you're a good Second Amendment guy," and he and I put our heads together and we started working on that for representing FFLs.
Right on. Shout out to Sean. He's a good friend of ours as well. So, Sean established the Colorado Federal Firearms Licensee Association late last year because of all the gun control that it was attacking FFLs here in the state of Colorado. We have, I think, 2,111 or so FFLs here in Colorado that are being affected by all this horrific gun legislation. And you would think that we had some sort of trade organization or a way to unify all of these businesses, and there wasn't one. So he saw the need for it, created it, and here we are today. So like I said earlier, Teddy is the vice president of the CFFLA. Sean is the president. I am the founding secretary, as well as in charge of a lot of public relations and member relations. And we have James working on all the legislative stuff. So if you are an FFL and you are out there and you want to get involved, please reach out. You can go to cffla.org and fill out the form. We would love to have you involved. We are looking for people to take leadership positions because we need everybody in the fight and as many people as possible.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you here. So what's been the hardest case? So you got into this, but before then, or even after that. So what's been the hardest case or moment that you've seen an FFL face under, some of these new, just kind of monster laws?
Yeah. So the hardest problem that we've had is over the last couple of years, the Biden administration had a zero tolerance policy as far as FFL mistakes go. When I talk about FFL mistakes, I mean, we're not talking about somebody is illegally selling guns out the back door of their shop. We're talking about, it was a really rough day and, you got 40 different people that are buying guns from you and stuff, and you wrote the wrong address on the wrong line in your bound book. And the ATF they had a policy that if it was an honest mistake, it wasn't something that actually put a gun into the wrong person's hands. It wasn't something that was an economic benefit to an FFL. They weren't going and revoking licenses. They were saying, hey, fix the mistake. Don't do it again. We're going to check you in a couple of years, make sure that you're compliant and everything is good to go. Under the Biden administration, they started revoking licenses left and right. There were I had the number up here. There were 195 FFLs that got their licenses revoked, and it wasn't because every time the Democrats are talking about we need to have new restrictions on FFLs, they always try to make it sound like we're selling guns out the back door. That we know there are people who are not going to pass background checks. So I just order myself an extra Glock and I drop it out the back door for $800. I would defy them to find an example of that ever happening anywhere. I mean, it's just unheard of. But they started taking minor paperwork mistakes like that and revoking people's livelihoods because of it. And fortunately, under the Trump administration, we've seen a reversal. They've brought some common sense back to it. I haven't actually seen any cases with people getting their licenses revoked under the Trump administration. I'm sure there are errors that happen. I'm sure people go through administrative hearings. I can't exactly go into some of the dumb stuff that my clients have pulled, but I've seen some dumb moves over the years. And there certainly can still be revocations that happen under the Trump administration, but it's not going to be for just minor paperwork errors like we were seeing under Biden. And that's going to be a huge change. It's very good news for FFLs. The problem is the state of Colorado and what we're about to be dealing with them. Because unfortunately, the state of Colorado decided that the ATF was too nice and kind. So we're going to set up our own bureaucratic agency to police FFLs. And really what this comes down to is they're still pissed about the magazine ban and the ineffectiveness of that, because all the all the sheriffs, all the DAs in the state kind of got together and said, we're not gonna enforce this. We're not gonna make this a priority. I certainly see cases of people charged with large capacity magazines, but it's always because they were committing another crime. They were dealing drugs, they were robbing a bank, something like that, and they happened to have a large capacity magazine on them. So the state is setting up their own Gestapo to start going around to FFLs and start revoking licenses. And before it even goes into effect in July, it is already turning into a nightmare. The first big problem that we've got is the state can't handle the fingerprints, because they haven't come out and said exactly why that is, but CBI is the agency that is tasked, Colorado Bureau of Investigation is the agency that's tasked with running all the fingerprints. And Department of Revenue is the agency that's tasked with running this. And the money that is coming in for the new state FFL is all coming into the Department of Revenue. But CBI has to do the legwork on running all of the fingerprints. And if you ask me, I think they probably got a bureaucratic pissing match over who's going to get the money
Yeah.
to pay for all of this. And CBI has not given the code to Identigo and the other fingerprint vendors around the state to start submitting fingerprints into CBI. So we're almost a month away from this going into place. All the fingerprints have to be done electronically. It all has to be electronically submitted to CBI. And the vendors that they've chosen to do this can't submit any of the fingerprints because they're not handing out the code to do it. Just a simple 3-digit code of how these are supposed to be logged in. And I think that's going to be endemic of what we're going to see in the state in the coming years. It's going to be extremely poorly mismanaged. And the entire point is to harass FFLs into giving up their license. And I can tell you, I know at least a dozen. Then they're giving up their license before this next renewal because they don't want to deal with this state. And there's
That's
there's probably
unfortunate.
a lot more than that. Yeah.
That's very, very unfortunate to see people closing up shop because of red tape and bureaucratic
Mhm.
nonsense.
Yeah, that's and just seeing how politicized it gets so fast. They claim they're making laws, and then all of a sudden you have all of this behind the scenes. So what keeps you going, when the fight gets this ugly and just political?
Well, it's my livelihood too. I've got my FFL, and obviously I'm an attorney. That's my day job. I'm not running Spartan Armory. I've just got a small gunsmithing shop down here in the Springs. But I love it. I love being able to go down to the shop and work on my own firearms. My dad and I started that place. He is 83 now. So he's
Wow.
he's kind of retired. Yeah, which means he's only in the shop 4 days a week, mostly working on all my
Only.
old projects. We only working on all my old projects we had lying around. But I don't want to lose that. It's absolutely an important part of my life. And even before I opened up a shop, I've always been a shooter. Shooter hunter. It's something just in my soul. I love firearms. I love them. I want to protect them, and it's something that I can do, and that I'm glad to do.
So we had a person in the comments ask, just for clarification, the 195 FFLs that were revoked their licenses, was that in
Mhm.
Colorado or was that nationwide?
That was nationwide, and
Okay.
that's FFLs that lost their license because of revocation hearings and actions by the ATF. That's not counting people that knew that they were going to be going through an ugly audit and decided they were going to give it up or didn't want to comply with the upcoming red tape. That's just revocations.
Got it. So, one of the things that we have been working on behind the scenes, the Second Syndicate, the CFFLA, and James Cook, is that we saw, because James kind of alerted us and spearheaded the issue that is going on right now with the Big Beautiful Bill, that the language has been changed and Section 3 of the Big Beautiful Bill for the Hearing Protection Act was removed. And James reached out to us and he started talking to us about Colorado Revised Statute 1812 102. And that state statute treats suppressors as what they call dangerous weapons, which I've always found kind of redundant. So they're basically saying, you know, suppressors and silencers are so dangerous and so bad, but the minute you give us $200, they're no longer dangerous and they're no longer bad. So as you can see, this is a money issue. This is a revenue maker for government, right? And so we want to talk a little bit about what we're doing for that. We've actually created a letter not only for the basically all of the Republicans in the state of Colorado to sign to submit to Mike Crapo in DC. He is I believe, the chairperson of the Senate Finance Committee that is going to be reviewing the big beautiful bill, and we are asking them to very, very politely put the Section 3 of the Hearing Protection Act back into the big beautiful bill, because without it, it would make Coloradans, and I think, how many states did you say? 17 other states that we have found?
I counted up to 20.
Oh, wow. Wow. So without Section 3, suppressors would become illegal in the state of Colorado, as well as apparently 20 other states that he came to find out. So we want that language to be put back. So can you please break down what that means for everybody out there, and why we need to reach out to these people and get Section 3 put back in the big beautiful bill, and what the big beautiful bill is?
Yeah. So let's just kind of start at the beginning there. So, big beautiful bill, for those that don't watch Fox News every night. It is the budget that the Republicans are trying to pass through. While we've still got a majority in the House and we've got a president that's going to sign it. It prioritizes a lot of good things. There are obviously some problems with it. I'm not going to go big into the politics and how much money exactly is being spent in this bill. But one of the provisions that was put in there early on was a provision to drop the tax on suppressors from $200 down to zero. It would make no other changes in the National Firearms Act, but it would at least drop the $200 down to $0. I think that would be a good thing, and it would definitely keep everything in compliance with Colorado law. Obviously, the goal is to remove suppressors from the National Firearms Act, to make it so we don't have to go through the whole registration process. And there was a law that was introduced in this session. It's actually been introduced for about the last 10 years, called the Hearing Protection Act. It's gone through a number of different ideations of it, but the latest one essentially says that we're just going to remove silencers from the National Firearms Act. And then it has another section that says that if firearms are removed from the National Firearms Act, if you purchase a silencer, you go through the Brady Bill compliant Form 4473 background check, then that silencer shall be determined to be in compliance with any state laws requiring registration and permission slips in order to have them. That's a really important part of this law. And unfortunately, what we saw happen in the big beautiful bill, when it was in the House Finance Committee, there was an individual, I believe it was Representative Cloud from Texas, who managed to put in part of the language from the Hearing Protection Act. The part that essentially said we're going to strike silencers from the listing of regulated categories under the National Firearms Act. The problem with doing that, and that got added in, that got passed out of the House. The problem with doing that is Colorado has a statute which says that a dangerous weapon means a firearm, silencer, machine gun conversion device, short shotgun, or short rifle. So focus on silencer there. And in order to have a silencer, it says is an affirmative defense to the charge of possession of a dangerous or illegal weapon that said person had a valid permit and license for possession of said weapon. All right. So in Colorado, the idea behind this, a lot of states have these laws against silencers. The idea being that the federal government is overtaxed, federal prosecutors don't have the time or the resources to go after everything. So if they just saw a random, street level drug dealer that had a pistol with a silencer on it, they wanted the local authorities to be able to prosecute him instead of having to turn that over to the federal government. So a lot of states have laws that are very, very similar to Colorado's. The problem is if we don't have a way to get a valid permit and license for that silencer, it is not going to be legal to get a new silencer. And I think from reading this, if the big beautiful bill passes as written right now, everybody that has a can right now is going to be okay, because we've all got our NFA tax stamps, we've all got our paperwork, we're going to have to hold on to it, but we're going to be okay going forward. But we're not going to be able to sell new silencers anymore, because you're not going to be able to get that permit and license because they omitted Section 3 of the Hearing Protection Act. So it was absolutely well intentioned. I'm not going to fault the intentions of the House person that decided he wanted to add that in there, because I think they truly just wanted to do the right thing and get silencers removed. But even in the state of Texas, that would now make sales of all new silencers illegal. And in fact, you can tell that there are states that recognize this. Texas just this week passed a new law of the Texas House that removes all of the Texas laws regarding silencers because they
Smart.
realize that because they realize if this passes the House, you're not going to be able to buy new silencers in Texas.
Very smart.
Unfortunately, the Colorado legislature is not going to do anything of that sort, and they are going to jump for glee if they realize that we unfortunately shot ourselves in the foot on this.
Yeah. And so, like, for someone like me, I have 2 cans that are still with the ATF. They're still in lockup right now. I have
Mhm.
1 can that I've had going through the process for about 10 months now. I have 1 that's been going through the process for about 2 months. If this were to pass and I still hadn't received my cans, what would happen to those cans and what would happen to me? Because I've already paid those $200 per can.
Presumably, anybody with a can that's already pending is probably going to get a tax stamp before everything is all said and done. It's possible that if, the big beautiful bill passes and you decide I'm going to go out the next day and buy a can, that the whole process is going to be shut down and you're not going to be able to complete it. But the important point is people that have a stamp are going to be good. People that have something pending and are able to get a stamp while they're still handing them out, they're going to be good. But anybody that doesn't have one at that point is not going to be able to comply with the permitting process, and they're not going to be able to get a new can. So that's why we need to have Section 3 of the Hearing Protection Act put in there. Treatment of certain silencers. It says there's. I actually tend to like the version that's out of the Short Act,
Mm-hmm.
which is is basically the same thing as the Hearing Protection Act. It would deregulate short-barreled rifles. I think the wording of it is a little bit better in the Short Act, but what it essentially says is if you go through that 4473 background check, that shall be treated like you are in compliance with the National Firearms Act and that you have that permanent license. Now, I know a lot of people I've been seeing are saying, well, if they just remove it from the NFA and you can't comply with it, then you're automatically in compliance with it. And I get the argument that they're making, but that is not going to fly with the state of Colorado. It doesn't, in the Colorado revised statutes, it does not say that you own this in compliance with the National Firearms Act or in compliance with federal laws. It says that you have to have a valid permit and license. And the state of Colorado is not going to give you that permit. And if the ATF doesn't, you're not going to be able to get one.
So we published a press release. You can go see it at the Second Syndicate on X. We will be putting in all our platforms. But we published a press release last night saying, indeed, we do not support, we're not in fan of the Form 4473. However, because of the way the law is written here in the state of Colorado, that it's the better alternative than disarming millions of people. And right now we have to work with what we have. So I don't want people to assume that the Second Syndicate is like, yay, Forms 4473. No, we don't agree with any of this stuff, but we also disagree with the fact that millions of people would not be able to access these tools.
Yeah.
So I have a follow-up question based on some of the things you were saying here. So, given the current state of the bill and given the Colorado law, it's dropping the fee down to $0. It's omitting the language that says this will be treated as a registration, and that's the key part. That it's a $0 fee, so it's still there, but it's $0. But there's no exchange of a tax stamp, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and I kind of glossed over that a little bit there. So the current version of the big beautiful bill got rid of the drop the tax from 200 to 0 portion. What it does is simply just removes silencers from the National Firearms Act. If we had the provision that you could, that you're required to get a tax stamp, but it's $0, that would completely fly under Colorado law because you're still getting the federal permission slip for it. You're just not paying for it. The current provision we have in the big beautiful bill simply says we're just deleting silencers from the National Firearms Act. And the problem with that is now you're not getting a tax stamp. And there's nothing in federal law that says that you're compliant with any sort of federal rules to go out and get this. There's nothing we can point to and say, well, see, I've got a license and permit from the government because it said if I went through that 4473 background check, that's my license and permit. And the people that drafted the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act as well recognized this problem was going to hit us if they simply just deleted silencers from the NFA. So they wrote that provision in, and it's not the big sexy one. The big sexy provision is the part that just knocks silencers out of the NFA. And unfortunately, if all that passes is that, we're going to be stuck with federal law that says these are good. They're not regulated under the NFA. You just got to do a regular background check. And state law that says you haven't complied with, our permanent license requirement there, and now it's going to be illegal.
So we do have a question from the Peanut Gallery out there. Shout out to everybody who's in the chat. They asked, would the regular background check you get for a firearm not qualify as your permission to own it? And the second question was, would this go into effect overnight, or would we have some time to react to buy suppressors?
So it would go into effect when the big beautiful bill goes into effect, and I believe it's about 90 days is usually what the time frame that we have on some of these bills. So it wouldn't be an overnight thing, and you're going to see all sorts of stuff in the news about the BBB getting voted on and all sorts of stuff about that. So it's not really going to be a big surprise when the big beautiful bill gets passed. As far as the 4473 background check, as it's written right now, if you just delete silencers from the National Firearms Act, you may go through a background check, although I think with the way that it's written right now, you wouldn't even have to go through a background check to buy a silencer. But the problem is that 4473 isn't going to be really a federal permission slip. If 4473 isn't a permission slip for you to own a firearm, it is just proof that you complied with a background check. And the Section 3 language that we have to get added in says that completing that 4473 acts as your permission slip for having a silencer. It doesn't actually require it under federal law for states that don't require it. But if you do go through that for states like Colorado, like Texas, Michigan, Wyoming, we've got the full list in our press release there. That is going to count as your permission slip to own that silencer.
That's ridiculous. So a lot of people are talking about the Byrd rule. If you guys aren't familiar with the Byrd rule, it's BYRD rule, and it's being talked about right now that it would add a block procedurally to getting Section 3 added back into the big beautiful bill. Can you break down for us what the Byrd rule is and how that potentially could be a problem?
Yeah. So the Byrd rule. So when essentially the way that any sort of spending bill has to happen in the federal government, it starts in the House. House passes it. It goes to the Senate. The Senate passes it. It goes to a conference committee if there's differences in the two versions. And then they both pass that and it goes up to the president to sign. There is the filibuster process in the Senate, and it hasn't been fully revoked yet, which basically says if there are enough people in opposition to this, 60, if they can't get over 60 votes, then they can filibuster and they can stall a bill from being passed. And back in the 1970s, they realized that, hey, passing budgets is actually an important thing. Nowadays we just pass continuing resolutions to, keep tacking debt onto the top there. But the idea was in order to keep budget moving through the Congress, that they would have something that couldn't be filibustered. And it was called the reconciliation process. So budget reconciliation says that the House, if they tag this as a budget reconciliation bill, they can pass it out of the House by a pure majority vote and then send it over to the Senate. And the Senate does not have to have 60 votes in order to pass it out, as long as it is budget related and it's a budget reconciliation. The problem, of course, was people just realized that really quick Congress is just going to declare everything as a budget-related bill, and they're going to completely get around the filibuster because they're just going to say it's a budget concern. So there's something called the Byrd rule, and the Byrd rule says that essentially if there is non-budgetary provisions that are in a reconciliation bill, they can be stricken or the bill can't go forward. So the concern and the reason why originally there was only the change of $200 to 0 for silencers under the NFA was to be in compliance with the Byrd rule. And there was a congressman that decided, hey, I'm gonna slip this in there, just remove silencers from the act. I know Jeff Crank, my personal congressman out here, he said that the reason that he was supporting the full registration process, but it changed from 200 to 0 for silencers was to get it past the Senate, past the Byrd rule. That's why he said that he was supporting just changing the dollar value for the tax stamp. The concern that we've got is the more that we try to add into this particular law, the more likely it is that the Senate parliamentarian, and the parliamentarian's job is to enforce the rules of the Senate, the more likely it is that the Senate parliamentarian is going to say that's a non-budget related process, take it out, or we're not going to be able to vote on it. Interestingly, the last time that budget reconciliation came up was in 2021. Joe Biden was president, Kamala Harris was vice president, and it was argued that the person who makes the decisions on whether or not the bill can proceed is not the Senate parliamentarian. They can make their suggestions to the Senate on how they should proceed. It is the individual that is presiding over the Senate, and the person that presides over the Senate is the vice president. So there is good legal argument from the Democrats from 2021 that actually it's J.D. Vance who should be making the decision on whether or not this particular provision of the bill can go in. It's going to be a political mess, and it's not even it's not even all Second Amendment related. This is 6 lines out of a 6,000-page bill that we're talking about here. So it's much bigger stuff than just what we're talking about. But unfortunately, we're kind of getting drugged along for the ride. So the concern is that the more we push, the more we try to get this stuff in there, the more we try to get the portions that we need for this not to make silencers illegal in Colorado, the more pushback that we're going to get against it, and the more people are going to be saying you're putting in non-tax related portions. The counter argument to that is these are all tax related because we have to pay a $200 tax on all of these items, and we're just making sure that we are eliminating a superfluous tax that doesn't need to be in there anymore. That is a tax, a budget related issue, and we're using language to clean up exactly how it is done, and then that is going to be up to the politicians in DC to fight.
So, I'm still stuck on Section 3.
Yeah.
So the Freedom Caucus said no to Section 3 because of the 4473. So what's your view on that?
Can we just break down for everybody out there who's unfamiliar with what is the Freedom Caucus, first of all?
Yeah, the House Freedom Caucus, it is a very conservative group of House Republicans. And I believe they got a Senate wing as well, but it's a very conservative group of Republican politicians. And their opposition to Section 3 of the Hearing Protection Act is that Section 3 would still require that people would have to go through a background check to purchase a silencer. In a perfect world, silencers would be treated just like any other muzzle device for your gun. It'd be just like a flash hider or a muzzle brake or something like that. And I could go on Brownells and I could order myself one. And I could have it shipped free, in 2 days to me. Or to Spartan Defense, yes. or Cook's Gun Repair too. You can go to any one of these places and buy yourself one of them and not have to go through any kind of background check. That is the ideal. That's exactly what we want to happen. But the problem is that view does not comport with state laws. And state laws are on the book. Colorado is one of them. There are 19 other states that I've found that are going to be identical to Colorado or very, very similar, where they have laws saying that unless you get a federal permission slip to own this, that is going to be an illegal silencer and you cannot get it. So presumably everybody that's already got one is going to be okay because we've already gotten our federal permission slips when the NFA was in place for silencers. But if that's deleted, we're not going to be able to get that. So the House Freedom Committee has said that caucus has said they don't like it because it requires 4473s. And I agree. I don't like that either. I'm not a big fan of making everybody go through 4473s. I don't think it's a necessary step. I think that a silencer is completely superfluous without a gun to put it on. If you're going to run a background check on it, anything, run a background check on the gun and don't worry about the silencer. But in order to keep it compliant with state laws in almost half the country, you have to run a 4473 or you have to have the NFA registration process. And I would much rather do a standard 4473 and have a provision of the law that says that shall be counted as good for your permission slip from the federal government than having to go through the full NFA registration process.
So as people are watching, I want people to understand that indeed this is ideal versus necessary right now. And we're working with what we have. Do we want to ask for permission for any of these things? Absolutely not. We're very, very staunch patriots here at the Second Syndicate. We don't believe in asking permission for any of these things. However, I don't think people really understand the volume and the nature of the big, beautiful bill. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to get this done. We will never probably see in our lifetime the ability to get these things changed because we have a really, really nice lineup of a president who we already know will sign it and a majority in DC that would support it. The problem is right now when we have people saying, oh, we don't want the form 4473. Of course we don't. But without Section 3, law-abiding gun owners and FFLs would face prosecution. So this is our way of saying, hey, you know what? We're working with what we have to figure out a way around this. That way we have time. We're basically buying ourselves time and deregulating something in the direction that we want to go. No, it's not ideal. However, this is what we have, and this is what we can do right now to make sure that people still have access to these tools.
Yeah. So, when I hear that, I think of kind of this conflict of, principles of federalism, and let the states do what they're going to do. And it sounds like that's kind of more of the Freedom Caucus, and that's why they're saying no to Section 3. So with all of these different camps, even, on the side of this bill and this section, what would you say is the path forward to protect gun owners without dividing the entire movement?
I think we need to take wins where we can get them. I cannot remember the last time that we had a win, to be honest. There have been,
especially here.
There have been, yep, yeah, especially here in Colorado. There have been a lot of times when we avoided a disaster and we celebrated that like it was a victory. But to truly actually see something roll back and to make it easier, simpler, to get that done, it just hasn't happened. So I think we need to focus on taking the win here and understand. Look at the other side. I remember back in the early 90s, growing up, I was born in Washington State and going to the county fairgrounds out there outside of Seattle, and you would see guys pull up with a crate of Chinese AKs and crack them open and sell Chinese AKs for $150 with magazines and 1,000 rounds of ammo.
Yes.
You can't do that in Washington anymore. Washington's even farther gone than Colorado is, and Colorado's not far behind. If you think about what the country looked like in the early 90s and what it looks like now, it has been a downhill slide. And we've got to realize that we've got to take victories where we can get them. And the way that we got to this situation, it wasn't all overnight. They didn't suddenly just pass one bill and said, "Hey, we're going to start limiting importations of foreign assault weapons, and we're going to not let you sell barrels with parts kits anymore, and we're not going to let you import 7 and 6 ammo anymore." They didn't do all that in one bill. They did it incrementally over the last 20, 30 years. Yep. So we need to take the opposite look and look at this as, hey, we're going to incrementally start bringing our rights back. Because if we think that we're going to be able to pass one awesome, big, beautiful gun bill, you got another thing coming, because you're not going to be able to get the political parties, even among the Republicans, you're not going to be able to get them all signed up on something like that. But we can probably get them all to agree, hey, let's take silencers off the list. Maybe let's take short-barreled rifles off the list next. Maybe, let's start allowing some more foreign importations. Let's reverse the once a machine gun, always a machine gun rule, so we can bring back some of the guns from Korea that we left over there. There are lots of little incremental steps that we can take, and we have got to get our focus back on doing that, because that's exactly how they got us into the position we're in right now.
Well said. Well said. We're going to take a quick commercial break from our sponsor, Mike Lindell, and we'll be back right after this commercial break.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for that commercial break from Mike Lindell. Feel free to go check out not only My Pillow, but his drink Rev 7. I really want to check it out as well. I think we have some actually coming here to the shop. Shout out to Spartan Defense. And you can use our code, the 2ND, the second. So let me know what it feels like if you guys order some. One of our good friends over at X America News, shout out to X America News, said if you're going to buy an energy drink, you might as well buy it from Mike Lindell because he's a former crackhead. And if you want to get a really good energy drink, who's better to make one than Mike Lindell? So on that note, let's get back to the questions that we have. We had some really good questions coming in from everybody on YouTube. Shout out to everybody out there supporting the channel and watching live here with us. One of the questions was, would you be able to purchase suppressors out of state of Colorado if the big beautiful bill passes the way it is now, and bring those suppressors in state, even though you were a Colorado resident?
Yeah, so that's going to be a hard no. And there's 2 good reasons for that. Number one is going to be you can't purchase suppressors out of state. You have to do it in your state of residence. That comes from federal regulations. And number 2, if you purchase it out of state, even if you purchase it in a state that doesn't require that you have to do any sort of registration for it, when you try to transport it into Colorado, you're not going to have a tax stamp for it. You're not going to have that federal permission slip that you need to have for it. So understand that people that that live in free America, that decide they're going to move to Colorado for whatever reason after this law is put into place like it is, they're not going to be able to bring their lawfully purchased silencers from another state into Colorado because they're not going to have that federal permission slip.
And think of the cost that they would be losing and the investment that they made in that. Because if you're out here buying suppressors, they are not cheap pieces of equipment, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to be able to obtain those pieces of equipment and have them wherever you go, you would need to help support getting Section 3 added back to the big beautiful bill. Because like I said, I want to be selfish and focus on Colorado, but unfortunately there are 20 other states, as James Cook said, that are going to be affected if that section of the Hearing Protection Act isn't put back into the bill.
Just a side question here with the 20 states. So do you feel like 20 states is a good critical mass for someone to really push for some change in this section of the bill?
It certainly could be. What we have to understand is that there are 20 states I think are going to be affected by this. There are 8 where silencers are outright banned. A lot of the states that are going to be affected by this are the extremely Democrat states. You got, unfortunately, I hate to say we're one of them, Colorado. You got states like Washington, and they're not exactly going to have very strong pushes from their state legislators to try to fix this particular problem. Other states, Texas, North Dakota, North Carolina, I think states like that, they are going to have that push. I know that Alicia and I have been working behind the scenes, hitting up our secret group signal chats, trying to get some legislators working on some of this stuff, and we've got some people that know more people than we do in DC that are working on this problem and are trying to get some people that are going to be friendly towards us to bring this up, because it's an absolutely urgent need. And it was, as I said earlier, it was done for the right reasons, but unfortunately, we are going to get screwed hard if this passes the way that it's written.
So the Second Syndicate isn't just a show, everyone. It is a movement, and we are absolutely dedicated to the Second Amendment. So what a lot of the people, what a lot of the people out there don't see is that myself, my business partners Teddy and Rosie of Spartan Defense, we're working till 1, 2, 3 in the morning to research these things, put together language, coordinate our House Republicans, our Senate Republicans, to get them right now to sign a letter to Mike Crapo and urge them, hey, that Colorado really wants the Section 3 put back, and we want to show him that indeed we support this, and this is why, because it would not only benefit Colorado, but it would benefit other states, and without it, it would hinder Colorado in a significant amount. And this is a very important time. Like I said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So I really want to implore everybody to be calling their senators. If you're in Colorado, I have that information here for you right now. You can call, let's see, it is, who is his name? Michael Bennett. And we have Hickenlooper as well. Those are your representatives as of right now. So Michael Bennett's phone number is 202-224-5852. You can also call John Hickenlooper at 202-224-5941 and let them know that indeed we want this. We want them to add Section 3 back. We support the big beautiful bill. And also call the Senate Finance Committee members, especially all the Republicans, and call them several times. We can put that link up here, and we can also put that on our website at the Second Syndicate. But make sure that you know that, hey, we want this, we support this, we support not only getting this removed from the NFA, but we need them to add that Section 3 to protect the people here in Colorado, because we do want the big beautiful bill. We do want this to happen, but we don't want it to be at the detriment of all of these people in America that deserve access to these tools, because again, the Second Amendment is not a privilege, it is an absolute right. So there you have it.
Well put.
Well, let's take it to some questions and things that we have as well. I know that there's a lot of legal confusion out there for people understanding what is happening and how this would affect Colorado. So if I was, say, a resident of Texas as well as a resident of Colorado, and the big beautiful bill came into effect, would I be able to only have suppressors in Texas and not bring them into Colorado?
So if they were purchased in Texas and you didn't go through the NFA process, you would not be able to bring them into Colorado. The problem is the Colorado dangerous weapon statute does not make any differentiation based off of where you bought it, how long you've had it, anything like that. It sets out a bright line rule, and that bright line rule is it is an affirmative defense to the charge of possession of a dangerous weapon that you had a valid permit and license for possession of such weapon. If you go to a fantastic state that is not going to have to comply with any of this, and you purchase that item there, and you try to bring it into Colorado, even if you're a Texas resident and you decide that you're going to go elk hunting in Colorado, it is legal to hunt elk with a silencer in Colorado. Fantastic. You can bring one across state lines into Colorado to go elk hunting with your silencer. That's fantastic too. But if the BBB passes with this provision in there as it is written right now, if you purchased that silencer in some other state and you didn't get your NFA tax stamp on it, you wouldn't be able to bring it into Colorado because you would not be able to show that you have a valid license and permit for the possession of that silencer.
Well, so I have a question here in the chat that says, this brings up my question about military. What happens when someone PCSs to Colorado and brings a suppressor that they bought in another state where it's legal and still has residency in that other state? Would military have an exception or exemption for that?
So there is a exemption in the Colorado Revised Statutes. A person that has a silencer or one of these items, if they're a peace officer or a member of the armed forces of the United States or National Guard, acting in the lawful discharge of their duties. So here's where we kind of get into the rub with it. Acting in the lawful discharge of their duties. Does that mean that I purchased this legally in another state and I'm now bringing it into Colorado because I was PCS'd here? If so, great. Or does that mean that I am, a member of a tier one special forces group and I am relocating from Fort Bragg to Fort Carson and I'm bringing a personal weapon that I use? I've never seen anybody in special forces, even though those guys get really cool stuff, that uses their own personal gear when they're going overseas.
Mhm.
And it seems to me like that is probably the aim that they were going for. So it'd be more of a law enforcement sort of thing. So I don't know exactly how well that would work out. There are exceptions in the Colorado magazine ban for active duty military personnel, that they can go out and they can purchase quote unquote large capacity magazines. So the state of Colorado has shown through some of their other legislation that they wanted to make it easier for military personnel, even though you're probably not going to have a private over at Fort Carson going and buying all of his own magazines that he's going to ship overseas with, although it certainly happened during the global war on terror. You're probably not going to see that. So that shows that they at least want to give some deference to maybe we're going to allow military personnel to have equipment that civilians can't have. Again, that's something that you're asking you're asking about my interpretation of statutes, and ultimately I can make whatever fantastic argument I want. It's not my decision. It's going to be whatever judge is hearing this in the end.
Got it. Got it. So I would like to, Kellen, would you like to jump in and ask some questions?
Um, yeah, and I don't have the chat open, but do you think, as far as the Colorado legislature goes, because I vaguely remember from this last session them mentioning silencers and suppressors and saying something to the effect of, oh, we're not touching those. You can still have those. So do you think that there is even a chance for them to recognize the impact of this and just do like a very quick targeted bill, or they're just going to jump on it and say, ha ha ha, I got you?
I'll give you my personal opinion. Absolutely not. They're going to be celebrating in the streets. There just aren't crimes that happens with silencers.
Yeah.
There was I believe there was a mass shooting about 5 or 6 years ago that involved a guy that had a pistol with a can on it. That is the only one that I'm familiar with. And if there were more, you would hear a whole lot more about it. The arguments against silencers are made based off of hyperbole. Is people saying that, well, if if the guy in Las Vegas had a silencer on his rifle, then nobody would have known they were being shot at and he would have killed thousands more and crap like that. So they absolutely want to ban this. They want to ban silencers. The reason that they haven't been a big target yet for the state is because there is the federal NFA process that we have to go through in order to get them. So I think that the legislature has not made it a priority to go after silencers or even to go after short-barreled rifles or any of those sort of things, because they see the NFA as the model. They want everybody to be paying a $200 tax to go and buy
Yeah.
their gun. So it makes a lot of sense for them to try to uphold that. So if we understand, I hate to say it, we're going to be poking the bear either way.
Yeah.
Okay. If the tax gets dropped from 200 to 0, you are probably going to see states try to backfill that $200. And one of the provisions in the Full Hearing Protection Act, which we haven't really touched on so far, there's a state preemption portion of the bill. And the state preemption portion of the bill says that individual states can't go in and all of a sudden put a new $200 tax or put new processes in place other than what's already been done by the federal government to backfill this. So the idea is that if they drop the tax here, state of Colorado can't go in and all of a sudden say, okay, we're going to put a $200 tax on this regardless. Okay. Because they're absolutely going to want to do that. If silencers get deregulated, you are going to see in the next legislative session, and we can probably tell you exactly who it is. It's going to be Tom Sullivan. It's going to be Julie Gonzalez. It's going to be people like that that are going to be going out and saying we need to put these, we need to ban silencers because if we don't ban silencers, the next mass shooting is going to be 10 times worse because it's going to be like a James Bond movie and nobody's going to even know they're being shot.
Yeah.
And it's crap, but it's what they're going to do. And I would rather poke the bear and have to fight that fight than give them the win and they can just simply sit back and say we're not going to do anything and these are going to be illegal anyway.
Well, people don't really understand that the $200 has been standard since what, the 1930s.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that dollar figure has not increased since then. So if you think about the inflation rate, that was what, like $3,400 back then?
Yeah. So and it's an interesting number how they picked the $200 was the $200 tax stamp was actually based off the price of a Thompson submachine gun.
Wow.
In 1934, you could open up the Sears Roebuck catalog. They had a famous advertisement of a guy in Western garb standing on the front porch of his log cabin with the big mountains in the background or something, holding a Thompson submachine gun. And that ran in the Sears Roebuck catalog, and you could buy one for $200.
God bless them.
So the federal government, the Department of Treasury said, well, that's what we're going to make the tax stamp. We're going to make it $200. Basically, it's going to double the cost of a Thompson, and it's never been adjusted for inflation, which is fantastic for us. Part of the reason why you didn't see a lot of machine guns being purchased back in the day. If you look at 1986, which was when the Firearm Owners Protection Act went into place, and banned the transfer of new machine guns to civilians as of May 1986, you could actually call up in 1985, you could call up Colt and buy a new M16 for about $650. And then you would have to pay 30% of the cost of the gun in your tax stamp. And a lot of people said, gosh, 850, that's too rich for my blood. I can't do that now. And now think about how much that M16 would be worth if you bought that in 1985. It is probably a $30,000 minimum
Yeah.
gun going forward. So the way that the NFA was written is that there was no provision in there to adjust the cost of the tax stamp relative to inflation. And, I guess the one positive thing that we can say about inflation, if there is one, is that the tax stamp is still 200. And back in 34, when this was passed, it was worth, the classic number I've heard is 3,800. I think we're over 4,000 now with current inflation adjustments.
Good Jesus. Woohoo. So we talked about preemption. Let's talk about federal preemption and how that would play in as a possible solution with the, addition or subtraction of Section 3, because we're talking about the bird rule and all that stuff. How would we impose federal preemption, and is that something that we could possibly get enacted? And let's explain to the people out there also what that means so they have a grasp of what we're saying.
Yeah, so the main portion that we need is, what I call the Section 3 of the Hearing Protection Act, the part that says that if you go through the 4473, that shall work for the requirements of the National Firearms Act, and states shall recognize that silencer as being owned in compliance with the NFA. There's also another section that is present in both the HPA and the Short Act, which says that states can't go in and backfill and can't pass their own taxes after the passage of this bill to essentially undo what the federal government did. And that's the idea of state preemption. That essentially the federal government can go in there and say that the Second Amendment says that firearms are protected. And the federal government has decided that they're going to go in and they're going to insert themselves into this space, and they're going to say that we're preempting states from doing their own thing on this. There is all kinds of tension about state preemption and that kind of stuff with regard from everything from illegal immigration to taxes to firearms in the federal court. So that one would absolutely be litigated out. But I think there's a very good argument that because the Constitution specifically addresses firearms, because the NFA was specifically in place for all of these years, saying taxes on it, that the federal government does have preemption over the states, and that they can make this argument and say that, hey, we're declaring that you can't just come up with these new taxes and put them on there. The way that the founders decided to set our legal system up was that the states were the labs of democracy. And you can have states that have laws that are more restrictive than what the federal government can do, but states can't be less restrictive than the federal government. Unfortunately, we've seen that with silencers in particular. In Texas and Montana, they both passed laws saying that a silencer that does not enter interstate commerce is solely manufactured, used, and purchased in the state of Texas or the state of Montana is not regulated by the National Firearms Act. I don't think they've actually found anybody that's willing to be the test subject to get hit by the ATF with a federal charge and then try to appeal it up yet. I could be wrong on that, but the point that I'm getting at here is that the federal government can stick their nose into things and can preempt this. That's one of the provisions that people think is going to kind of push it over the line with the Byrd rule. Is that if the Congress were to pass that provision that says states can't pass a tax on these, that would make it so that they can't do this under reconciliation. My argument on that is that they're essentially undoing a tax. There are plenty of other taxes that are undone in the big beautiful bill. I don't think that it is going outside the purview of this being a tax bill, a revenue piece of revenue legislation. It's just going in the opposite direction and removing that, and then stating that the federal government has decided that we're going to stick our nose into this. We're going to be the supreme authority on it, and we're not going to let states take it over.
Huh. So it's kind of just this, the justification for the whole Byrd rule issue is really, hey, there's a lot that was built upon this. There's a lot to unwind, and so on. It sounds like the Section 3 thing isn't perfect, but it's just kind of what we have right now. That's kind of the firewall we have, but even the Byrd rule, it looks like there are some pretty valid arguments to kind of get this through with, as you said earlier, the intent. Good intent, little weird execution, a lot of unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely sounds like in the right direction. Maybe don't have our helmet and pads on, sort of thing.
Yep, exactly. This was, it was done out of a good place. It wasn't executed perfectly. We are trying to, we're trying to fix this, because the ultimate goal of what they did with putting in just Section 2 of the Hearing Protection Act, it's an awesome goal. The problem is that we've got state laws that are then going to kick in and are going to outlaw things. So we've absolutely got to fix that, or else we are going to be in a worse place than we were without this law passed.
As well as with the Short Act, because
Yep.
I mean, it would be nice to get the full version of the Short Act back into that bill too, because that would affect all the short barrel rifles and all the nonsense that we're dealing with as well. So this is why it's very important for people to understand how absolutely necessary it is to follow along with this and urge your lawmakers that indeed you want the full language of the Hearing Protection Act put back into the big beautiful bill, as well as the Short Act. And I mean, if you think about it, silence is acceptance, right? So if we're not speaking out and we're not getting involved, you're responsible personally if this goes away for this once in a lifetime thing. So I do have a call to action for everybody out there. I would really love it if people remembered that the people are the ones that hold the power in this country. And it's time that you use that voice to do that. You can call the United States Capitol switchboard. That phone number is 202-224-3121. And you can leave a message and be nice, because this is not somebody that's, in a position to make your life a living hell. They're there to do their job. And you catch more things with honey than you do with vinegar. So keep in mind, call, be professional. Don't red flag yourself by any means. Don't say anything harmful or stupid that's going to get you in trouble, but you can also be kind and be firm at the same time and say something like, hey, my name is Alicia Garcia. I am your constituent, and I want you to support the Hearing Protection Act and the Big Beautiful Bill. I would love it if you incorporated the full language of the Short Act in this bill and Section 3 of the Big Beautiful Bill, and just let them know that, hey, indeed, I, as an American citizen, support this. And you can also go to Twitter and X platform and hit up these politicians directly and say, hey, guess what? I am your constituent. I do want this. Put back the full language of the Hearing Protection Act, put the full language of the Short Act into the Big Beautiful Bill, because indeed, again, this is a once in a lifetime chance. And I believe all we need is 51 votes in the Senate for this. Am I correct in saying that?
If it goes through under reconciliation, yes, 51.
Perfect. So if this passes, this would be very, very helpful for lawsuits on a state level as well. So this would allow us to combat all this ugliness that is happening in Colorado right now with all of the things that have passed into law before they go into effect, or indeed when they do go into effect. We can combat them and say, okay, now that this language and these things are in effect, we can come back and say, hey, now we have a little bit more ammo in our arsenal and we could fight back. So keep that in mind, people. This is a great opportunity for you to support real freedom. Like, I never thought that I would see something like this be able to be heard and put into effect. Just make sure that you're reaching out and saying, hey, include Section 3, heck, include all of the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act in the Big Beautiful Bill. Heck yes.
Yep.
Heck yes. So let's see what we got, if we have any questions out there from people in the peanut gallery. We have a lot of people that were asking things, and it's really, really hard to keep up with the chat. So forgive me, guys, on that. But one of the things that we can talk about also is, the internal 2-way unity talking points that we can give these people as your representatives and your state senators and these people as well, because not all of them are experts on everything, right? They're not experts on gun stuff. What are some talking points that we can give these lawmakers for them to help support getting that parliamentarian more likely to be favorable to our cause?
Well, let's talk first off about why silencers should be deregulated, and I'm sure a lot of people kind of understand some of this stuff, but silencers are not what they're made out to be in the movies. They don't make guns silent. They reduce the volume of firing a shot down to a more manageable level. OSHA, the operational. Yeah, exactly. The operational Health and Safety Administration, OSHA, says that any sound, no matter how long you are exposed to it, over 140 decibels, is going to cause instant, immediate, and permanent hearing damage. And it's cumulative. Just firing one gunshot. I'll admit it. I'm been hunting deer in the woods long enough that I fired many, many gunshots without silencers or hearing protection on, and my wife can tell you that I'm constantly hearing the ringing in my ears.
Huh?
What? Huh? Mop? So the idea of silencers is that it's a fantastic tool. You can bring that gunshot down below the 140 decibel threshold. And especially if you're talking about, teaching new shooters. I've got two girls, they are 8 and 11, and teaching them to shoot with a suppressed 22 is absolutely fantastic, because I can take them out to the range. I don't have to worry about, do they have the hearing protection on? If one of them walks away from the shooting line for a second to go get a snack in the car, and now she's walked up, she's standing behind me, did she take her ear pro off or something like that? I don't have to worry about it, because now I've got a gun that's not going to cause that kind of hearing damage. And for me, going out elk hunting, I can have a rifle that is not going to hurt my ears, but I can still have my ears open and listening to everything out in the woods. Is absolutely a hearing protection device. And if you look at the military has been moving towards acceptance of silencers all across the board, because there are wonderful advantages to having those. And it's not because it makes you undetectable, like in Call of Duty. It makes it so you're not going to blow your eardrums out, and you can still talk and communicate to people. So understand, the reason it's called the The Hearing Protection Act, silencers are designed for hearing protection. And that's what we need to be pushing for. That's what we need to be educating people on. In fact, in the majority of the rest of the world, silencers are either unregulated or they're encouraged to be used. In a lot
Yeah.
of European countries, they very strongly push them. And when we, kind of shift and start talking about short-barreled rifles, understand that when you put a silencer onto your rifle, silencers weigh a good amount of weight. All right, you're looking at anywhere from, depending on the type of silencer, a couple ounces at the absolute lightest. If you're talking about a centerfire rifle silencer, it can be up to 2 pounds, and they're fairly long as well. So it leverage works that the longer your moment arm is out there. I'm trying to remember high school physics. It's going to create more torque as you're holding it up, and it makes it heavier for the shooter. And there are people out there. I know not everybody is, built like a 6'2" linebacker like you, Alicia, but some people may have difficulties holding up really long, really heavy rifles, and allowing people to have a shorter rifle can reduce the weight, can bring it down to a manageable size. It's not about concealment. It's about making something that is more usable for a wide variety of people. I think it's very interesting that Democrats always like to say that, gun owners, oh, it's just a bunch of old fat white guys. Okay,
Yeah.
well, if you're trying to make a gun for an old fat white guy, something that is, has effectively a 28-inch barrel and weighs 11 pounds, may be fine for that old fat white guy that is 6'2" to shoot. But if you try to give it to a person that is disabled, a person, a battle gnome, if you will, having that huge, heavy gun with a long silencer on the end of it is going to be very difficult. So having a shorter rifle is absolutely a good thing to complement the Hearing Protection Act and encourage people to have shorter guns there. And then there's also the whole fiasco with pistol braces and everything that's happened with the ATF saying, no, pistol braces are not going to be a buttstock. It's going to turn into an SBR. Then they reverse it. And then they say that, well, if you never touch it to your shoulder, and then if you never got caught touching it to your shoulder, you're okay. And then we're going to come up with some sort of super secret test that is based off of, 47 different points and how you score on that. And then going completely off of that and saying, we didn't like the test. We're just going to tell you whether or not we like it or not. It's a mess, and it's something that needs to be cleared up and not be in this legislative gray area. And that's the perfect reason why the short act should be passed as well.
Indeed. I'm so
So
sick of these laws.
do you think that, okay, so say BBB passes as is,
Mhm.
in your scenario, we're kind of screwed, right? If it passes as is, Colorado is cooked. What about
No
short
pun
act?
intended, James.
There's your new slogan. You're welcome. You've been cooked. Um, so, so say short act or the Hearing Protection Act. Is there a chance for those to pass after this one? Because this is the budget and tax, kind of bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
These other ones, could they come behind this one and kind of shore up some of the deficiencies in this one?
They could be passed independently. What we need to understand is that the big hurdle is the Senate right now.
Yeah.
The Senate has the filibuster rule, and essentially you've got to get 60 votes in order to get anything through the Senate. Is it possible that we could peel a couple of Democrats off to support this? Yeah, maybe. If there was enough pressure from some
Everyone.
Democrats and from everyone. Maybe you could get a couple of Democrats say, hey, all right, we've got a situation where my state got hosed on this. For example, I pulled up the full list here. So it's, going in alphabetical order: Alaska, Arizona, Connecticut, Colorado, Georgia, Kansas, Michigan, Mississippi, Montana, Nevada, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Washington, and Wisconsin. So, if you could get one senator in 10 of those states to go along with the other 50 Republicans and say, yep, we're going to put this past the filibuster. Yeah, I think the Republicans would absolutely vote to pass the independent, the Short Act, and the Hearing Protection Act. As you know, as Alicia knows, I was sending around my kind of peanut butter and jelly mixing the two of them together version of the language, because the two of them aren't exactly copacetic with each other. But that's something that could be fixed. But you got to get it past the filibuster. And unless there is a big Republican turnout in the midterm elections that is able to push us into a really, really good range, it is going to take Democrats agreeing with Republicans to push it through. And that is going to be problematic.
Boo.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So I want to take this time just to remind everybody of what is going on here at the Second Syndicate. We are a 501c4, so every donation that you send our way goes directly to supporting and fighting for the Second Amendment. So working with people like James Cook, he is graciously working with us pro bono because he is part of the CFFLA. He is a very expensive man. So we want to thank him, obviously, for being here and being willing to have these conversations, because this is how we create awareness and this is how we get more people involved in the fight. But every donation that you send our way truly helps, because we need to be able to do the research. We need to be able to get the marketing out there and get people informed of what's happening and coordinate with all these politicians to get change happening. So you can go to our bonfire store as well. It's bonfire.com. The Second Syndicate. We have a whole bunch of merch that we have designed and published. We have some really cool things there. You can get just a Second Syndicate t-shirt. You can get something that talks about just how much we love Senator Tom Sullivan and all these other Jared Polis people, just showing our esteemed affection for them. So you can get over to our store and buy some cool swag, and that money goes directly to support us as well. You can also like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and also on X America News and all of our platforms. We're on Rumble, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. We are everywhere. So help us, go like, go comment, go share, and share our content with people, because we're sitting here talking about freedom things that people don't like, especially these hateful commies that are behind all of these media channels. They don't want us talking about this stuff, and they don't want us sharing this information. So the more you share our content really helps support us, and all that is for free. So you can do that and show some love for us. Make sure you hit the bell, make sure you subscribe, and you follow us and know what's going on. We do have some really, really cool guests that are coming up in the next few months. We have John Lott of the Crime Prevention Research Center. He's a brilliant man. He has created an organization, does a lot of really, really cool research that combats all the anti-gun information that we get out there saying, guns are the number one leading cause of death for children, which is an absolute lie. He publishes a lot of those studies and does a lot of amazing research. So we're going to have him, I believe, on June 5th. We are going to have possibly Jeff Crank, who is a congressman, on the show as well. We're working on getting him scheduled. We will have Josh Salem of the Colorado Republican Party and Freedom First Colorado in conjunction with Hannah Goodman. She is the head of the Libertarian Party and head of the Chainsaw Caucus here in Colorado. And we're going to talk about the differences and the similarities between the Libertarian Party and the Republican Party. So that's going to be a great show. We are also going to have some really cool candidates that are running for governor here in the state of Colorado on the show as well. So keep following us and subscribe. That way you know those amazing things that we're doing, and you can watch those shows as well. We also have a Give, Send, Go that you can go and donate to us at the Second Syndicate. So please support us, guys. It's very, very difficult to combat the money that the anti-gun movement has. They have Bloomberg money. They have Hollywood money. They have Moms Demand Action money. So everything that you can do to support us does help. Those super chats on YouTube help us tremendously. So thank you so much for that. I am also going to be talking with the Liberty on the Rocks in Granby this weekend in Granby, Colorado. If you're in the area, come out. We are going to be at High Mountain Firearms, and we are going to be hosting a really cool event. I'm going to be reviewing a lot of the things that are affecting Colorado, where we go from here. We're also going to be throwing some axes. We're going to have an open mic night, and it's just a opportunity for liberty-minded individuals to come together and meet and network and find people of like-mindedness in your area. So follow us and come see us and join us for that. Other than that, I think we have some things that we're going to talk about in closing. Is there anything specifically that you wanted to address, maybe about the Short Act or anything else that you want to talk about, James?
I think it's important that people realize that federal laws can absolutely have a huge impact on us, but the state law hits a little bit closer. And you can have the greatest law like we're seeing trying to be passed here with this, and if you've got a state law that absolutely undoes it, unfortunately, it can. So being involved in your state is as important, if not more important, than being involved with stuff at the federal level. This is the reason that we are on this show talking about this and raising this alarm, is because we have got a state problem with a federal law here, and people need to get more involved in their state, because this Colorado is a wonderful state. I love it here. I've been here for 20 years. I don't want to leave, but Colorado wants me gone. They want all
Yep.
of us gone, and we got to fight to stay here.
Indeed. Kellen, anything that you want to chime in on?
Yeah, I would really echo the state issue. I rarely involve myself with federal things. And I'm a very firm believer that, state is where it's at. That's where you see a lot of the action that affects you day to day. And I think, we've seen that with this past legislative session and going even further back, and it's starting to make an impact. You've had some of the Democrats that weren't so happy that people were so engaged express that. And I think they should really express themselves more, and we should really make them uncomfortable with asking questions and being engaged. I personally make it a point to stand right behind my state representative and when he's on the floor, and I clock him because he works for me. So, I think everybody should do that.
This is why we adore you, Kellen.
Yeah. He hates it. He's like, I'm working, look. And I'm just like, no, sit back down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot more people need to do that so that we don't have these state issues conflicting with federal, so that when something comes up, we can be adaptable versus, have to beg these weirdos, for stuff that should just be a given. We shouldn't be making more criminals. That's what this may do due to that conflict. I think a solution, more midterm to long term, is get involved. Just get involved. It matters.
And shout out to you, Kellen, because you have really done so much for us, not just me and Teddy and Rosia and the Second Syndicate and everybody else, but for the state of Colorado. I want people to understand that getting in front of these politicians takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of time. And we're all busy people, and we all can find a million excuses as to why not to get involved. But yet, when we go down to the Capitol and we see people like you, Kellen, and we see, people join in the fight with us, it gives us hope and it gives us unity. So thank you so much for being willing not only to co-host with us tonight, but to get involved and be a part of this. You are absolutely 100% stamped approved by the Second Syndicate, and we really appreciate your willingness to communicate and share your knowledge with us as well. When we go down to the Capitol, I know Teddy's not sitting here next to me, but we are all very racially ambiguous, and people don't know, what we are, which is very beneficial to our movement, because like James was saying earlier, is this old, white man mentality of, the Second Amendment is for those people. And it's not, it's for all people. And these politicians work for us. So the more diversity and the more involvement that we can have down there at the Capitol, talking and reaching out to these not only state but federal level politicians, lets them know that, hey, you know what? We are what the people is. We are the Second Amendment, and this is what the Second Amendment looks like. And our voices are united, and we are very diligent, and we are very dedicated to making sure that we are represented in our lawmaking. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you, man.
Absolutely.
Awesome. James, any final thoughts that you want to share? Because we have some questions that we're going to ask you that we ask everybody before we close the show out.
Just anybody that needs my day jobs, I do criminal defense. So you can go to my website, jamestcooklaw.com. It's got all my contact info on there. I handle all kinds of criminal defense issues, anything involving firearms as well. I do a lot with that. Write NFA Trusts for people wanting to buy silencers and short barreled rifles. And I'll say it I am very much wanting to get this legislation passed and fixed so that people can buy silencers in this state. And I will tell you, it is absolutely in my financial best interest not to have that happen because I write trusts for people, and this
Yeah.
is going to put me out of business. But I still want to see it happen because that's what needs to happen because freedom is more important.
And that's what makes you a real patriot. Truly. It really does. And that comes back to, like, for example, I'm a firearms instructor or educator, I prefer to say. And people are like, why are you against all of these new regulations for concealed carry and things of that nature? Because they're telling me, like, that's a cash cow for you. Now you're going to make all this money. You have these things. That's not the point. And that's not what we're motivated to do here, not only in the Second Syndicate, but at Spartan Defense and in this community is we're here to defend freedom. And sometimes it's not in the best interest of us financially, but it's in the best interest for us as the people. And we are of the people and we are for the people. And this is a 100% American for the people organization. So we want people to understand that we really need your support. One of the ways you can support us is on YouTube. Hit that bell, like, subscribe, comment, and share, and subscribe to everything that we're doing because it really helps us perpetuate our movement out into, the World Wide Web, if you will. And just to wrap up everything that we're talking about, we really want to hit it home to everyone out there that yes, we know that Section 3 of the Hearing Protection Act isn't perfect, but it is absolutely necessary to prevent mass criminalization of gun owners, not only just in Colorado, but across the nation. And we have to, just like James said, incrementally work on making sure that we can flip one thing at a time, and working things one step before the other. And this is a way that we can do that. So the bird rule, it is definitely a hurdle, but it's not a wall. There are ways around this, and that's going to come from the voice of the people, from us, people like James, Teddy, and the CSSA, and CFFLA, and Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, and all of these organizations that are pro-2A organizations, the NRA. We're all working together on the side to make sure that we get these letters and this information shared with our politicians. So support all of us, support those organizations. The Freedom Caucus is right in principle, but wrong in urgency. We want to reach out to them very respectfully and kindly and let them know that this affects us as people, and they are supposed to be representative of us. So give them some insight as to why they need to represent us. So before we go, both of you, we'll start with you, Kellen, and then we'll go to James. What is your favorite Holy Grail firearm? If you could have any firearm under the sun right now, what would that be?
I always struggle with this question. I think Teddy knows what it is. Um, right now,
Right now.
can I modify that to say favorite gun right now?
Yes.
My 2025 pick is going to be the Bull Armory Tac Pro or
Yes.
Tac Comp. Sorry.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes out, I'm waiting. I put the money aside. I am
Bull
just
Armory's bad.
waiting.
So bad. So good,
Yeah.
bad. They're gorgeous guns.
Yeah.
Have you seen the one that's like jagged in the front? You could just go
Yep.
boom. Oh,
Mhm. Yeah.
nice. I mean, I love violence, but in a very nice way. You didn't hear me say that. James, back to you,
Well,
baby.
this is a tough one because I recently got one of my grill guns. I actually
Nice.
my shop worked out a deal with Spartan for a Mark 23, and that was amazing. So I guess now that I've crossed that one off my list, I gotta say 10 millimeter MP5 would have to
Nice.
be on there. Mhm.
Nice. I have actually never said a gun on my own flippin' show. I have never said what a Holy Grail gun for me is. And listen, everyone, for everybody out there, I take money. I take guns as gifts. I take bribes when it comes to guns. Absolutely. So if you want to show me some love, I am absolutely infatuated with Q. Anything that Q makes, I would love. The boombox, the honey badger. I am literally spiritually united with honey badgers because it's who I am as a human being. I'm weird looking and awkward and not afraid of anything and oddly tiny. So it's my spirit animal. I also really, really, really love the Genesis Arms Gen 12 shotgun that they have suppressed. Oh gosh, so gorgeous. So gorgeous. But I'm currently on the hunt for a new handgun. I like all of my handguns that I have a lot, but I just don't love one. The only gun I really love, ironically, is my Glock 42, which is a 380, and I want a bigger caliber and I want something with more magazine capacity. But I am like one with that little gun. I'm so great with it, but I'm on the hunt for a new handgun. So anybody out there that wants to buy me and donate to my gun habit, to Spartan Defense, we will allow that. So shout out to my sponsor and my biggest fans out there and our biggest supporters, Spartan Defense, for being the greatest gun shop in Colorado. So in closing, everyone, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and share this show. Tell all your friends about us. Join the Second Syndicate. Join the movement. It is where the second is first. And that is a wrap. Thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate you. And everybody, peace and love, and have a great night.